calling all the way from Northern Ireland. I sort of got into reaching Mormon missionaries through the work of yourself and Jeff Durbin. Uh, Back when I was about 14, I remember watching videos online of Jeff interacting with Mormons and just learning a lot. And then fast forward, I'm now 21, studying in university at Belfast and encountering lots of Mormon missionaries and so on. So just really trying to be a witness in that situation and so on. But I know over the years, I've found you guys talk a lot about the changing world of Mormonism,
Yeah.
and I've really felt that that has continued to change. My recent conversation was with two young guys, and uh, it was a very brief meeting, unfortunately, so it didn't get a lot in there. But I remember just trying to, sort of gauge where they're at and so on, and just asking questions in terms of one of the questions I asked was, do you guys believe that Jesus was created by the Father in some sense, using the term literally begotten, as I've read that in a lot of literature and so on. And then they sort of said no. And I was sort of taken aback at that. And then I sort of try to redirect the question to maybe find something a bit more specific and familiar, asking, do you believe that Jesus and Lucifer are brothers? Or as are we all, in that sort of sense. And they just looked at me as if I had two heads. So it's it's very it's going to be very difficult to navigate. And I suppose just my question would just be, what would be your advice in terms of there's obviously a lot of literature out there and so on, and there's a lot of literature in terms of what the LDS Church has produced, and it can be a bit intimidating starting out. It's like, okay, the challenge of converting the Mormon to Mormonism before you can get them out
Yeah,
has
yeah, yeah,
sort of
yeah,
become increasingly challenging and so on. And I
yeah.
suppose what would be your advice in that context?
Yeah, you're exactly right because when I was actually younger than you and I started my study of Mormonism, it was intimidating the amount of literature and things like that. But I had it easy. It was a pretty stable target at that point in time, and what they had been teaching and believing had been the same thing for decades. And so I could read somebody like Joseph Fielding Smith, who had written 20, 30 years earlier, and they wouldn't already be out of date and irrelevant like Bruce R. McConkie is now. So, yeah, you do have a different situation now with how rapidly Mormonism is changing. And look, the missionaries have never been the gold standard of defining LDS theology. A lot of those poor young guys. I mean, I remember we were up at General Conference, one of the last General Conferences we went to. We started flying at the end, a whole lot easier than that 12-hour drive to Salt Lake City. And, well, 12 hours if you obey the speed limit. I won't tell you how fast we could get there. But anyway, um, you set the record? Okay. Well, no, I think me and DL set the record coming back when the kid was getting born. That's when we set the record. Anyway, I think the cops are still trying to chase us on that one. But anyway, there was this LDS missionary who was going out on his mission. The MTC, the Missionary Training Center in Provo, had just graduated a class. And this poor kid ends up seated at the window of the row with me and my son in the middle and aisle seats, and missionaries in the row in front that are straining to listen to this. And this kid was clueless. He had no idea what he was doing. He shot an entire roll of film on an Instamatic during takeoff. Okay, he had never been in a plane before. All right, that's what we're talking about here. And so even back then, you'd run into these missionaries, and the MTC, the Missionary Training Center, even back then only gave you minimal information. And now I'm wondering what in the world they're doing in there, because the missionaries do tend to be utterly clueless now. So it does, at least back then, when we started witnessing to a Mormon, we had some base from which to work. We're going to be heading out to the Christmas lights stuff at the Mormon temple starting, I think, within a couple of weeks. And when you talk to people out there, we used to be able to assume a certain level of knowledge, even down to the 9, 10, 11-year-olds. Now, it doesn't matter if it's an adult, whoever. You've got to let them talk long enough to get some idea of where in the world they're coming from and what in the world they know. Because Mormonism is such a broader spectrum of belief now. And
Right.
so, we started carrying, even when we were still going up to Salt Lake City, I'd start carrying teachings of Prophet Joseph Smith, maybe a copy of Mormon doctrine. Man, most Mormons today have never even seen those books. Don't even know who they were. Don't even know who they're written by. So it is much more challenging. You have to be prepared for a much wider range of expression of belief than in the past, and that can mean you end up talking for a long, long period of time. I know my son-in-law, he heads up our LDS outreach at Apologia Church, and there are times where he said, "Yeah, I got home about 3 o'clock in the morning." Wow, that was a long conversation. Yeah, it took the first 2 hours just to figure out where the guy was coming from, and then I could finally,
Right. Right.
do something. But it took a long time to get there, and I'm too old for that. He's young; he can survive it. But yeah, so you have to let him talk, and you may find yourself in situations where you literally know more about the Orthodox historical LDS theology than this Mormon does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's weird to try to convert them to Mormonism to then get them converted out of Mormonism. But sometimes it's almost what you have to do. Sometimes it's like they think Mormonism is actually just sort of a little bit different version of Christianity, and they don't even know just how radically different it is until you explain it to them. So, yep, you're running into what all of us are running into these days, and it is the changing world of Mormonism, and it's definitely a challenge. But I appreciate your watching the videos and that you have a heart to reach these folks. I mean, they tend to be really great folks, and it's heartbreaking
Yeah.
to think about what they believe and how false it is, and how there are so few Christians that actually reach out to them and do so with any level of knowledge at all. It's heartbreaking. So keep doing it. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was helpful. Where I have time, I sort of to summarize what I've sort of encountered. There's still that emphasis upon the Book of Mormon, the internal testimony, those sorts of things. So that is a connection point to go back to Scripture and to say, okay, how does Scripture call us to test authority claims and prophets and so on? And I found it to be quite bipolar, because it's sort of, they're emphasizing this sort of role of the modern day prophet as an interpreter of Scripture. Sort of similar to our Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox friends will bring the charge against Protestants. But then once you go to the statements of those prophets and those apostles, they don't want to touch them.
Yep.
So it's nearly bipolar in that sense,
It is. They want the comfort of the authority claim without the necessity of that authority claim to actually be consistent or coherent or historical or anything else. So yeah, it is amazing because, man, when I first started talking to Mormons, they would go to the mat in defense of Joseph Smith as a prophet. Now, well, prophets make mistakes. It's
Yeah,
like, whoa,
yeah.
okay, what?
I've
Yeah.
had the inerrancy of the Book of Mormon denied. I'm not sure if that was a common thing back in the day as well. But I
No.
have encountered that.
Nope. That's all new stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how the church survives it, because once you start getting that level of diversity within a strict authoritarian structure like that, the breaks and the cracks in the foundation start coming fast and furious. So we'll see what comes of that. Hey, well, God bless you out there, James. Keep doing the Lord's work, and thanks for listening.